Hello, hello, and good evening. How are you, Judge Matt? How are you?
Terri, doing well. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, for joining Talk Time with Terri, candidate for Court of Common Pleas. I do not want to mess his last name up, but we have our candidate friend here, because I always do for Court of Common Pleas. Please introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you. I am Judge Matt Rudzki, currently the district judge for the Fox Chapel area based here in Sharpsburg, and I am running for the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas.
Okay. All right. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. We will make sure that he answers all the questions that he can during this time. And if we run out of time, we will make sure that the candidate gets your questions. So please make sure you put them in the chat. All right. So let's get started.
Sure.
So, what inspired you to run for Court of Common Pleas?
Yeah, so this is going to be a long answer to that question. I've always been involved in local government. I started as a council person at the young age of 24 here in Sharpsburg. I ran for office in 2011, got reelected in 2015. And then in 2017, I ran for mayor. The mayor at the time had first been elected to the office of the mayor in 1975. So he was coming up on 50 years, and Sharpsburg was ready and ripe for change. And we always, Sharpsburg is a great little community. I was born and raised here, fifth generation. My dad was a police officer here for 41 years. My grandfather served on council, so it was part of my blood. And Sharpsburg needed that champion. They needed a cheerleader, someone with marketing and branding, social media, and just to celebrate all of our wins and our victories. And even small victories can turn into big ones. It's, just you hit critical mass with those small victories. So did that for 4 years. And then our district judge retired. And for me, it's always been about impact. And, I had done meaningful and effective work as mayor, as a member of council. So there were 6 people who ran for magistrate, and I'm grateful to have been the Democratic nominee. And then in the general, there was the Republican nominee plus an independent candidate, and I ended up winning that race. So I've been on the bench now for 4 years. And again, I think in my time on the bench, I've done great work, fantastic work. You just have to meet people where they are, treat them with dignity and compassion, understand where they're coming from. I like to say I've got that Sharpsburg spirit in me. And I was also lucky enough to go to Fox Chapel Area School District. I know everyone is feeling at any time. I've had a lot of experiences that way. So I want to take the impact I've had locally and scale it up to the rest of Allegheny County, and the time is right.
Ooh, thank you for that. And I want to get into some of your good things that you have done in the courtroom. We're going to get into that. I want to make sure that ladies and gentlemen, our audience knows about that as well. Cool. So let me ask you this: what role do you think, do you believe that a judge should play in the community?
Yeah, so, I think it might look different for a common pleas judge versus for a district judge. The beauty of district judges is we are community-based courts. And, as obviously I'm a lawyer, I'm running for the Court of Common Pleas. I practiced law for 8 years before I took the bench in Aspinwall, so right next door to Sharpsburg. And, as a mayor, I often say that anyone who even spends one day as mayor deserves a degree in social work. I also think anyone that wants to run for mayor should get their head checked. That's the only thing I'll say about the mayor's race. But at any rate, for me, I can see on average probably 40 people a day in my district court on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And something is as simple as reducing a traffic ticket from a point violation to no points. Or you work with someone on fines and fees if there's a sliding scale, or if you use payment determination hearings to eliminate those fines and fees, it can change their life. I once had an individual who hadn't had their license since 1988. I believe it was 1988. I was born in 1986. So this person hadn't had a driver's license for my entire life, for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And no judge had ever taken the time to say, hey, have you ever gotten a restoration letter? And I keep my phone with me on the bench. I look up someone's restoration letter, find out exactly what they need to do. I highlight everything they need to do for them. And then I ask them where they live. I keep in my bench the Working For You pamphlets, the trifolds that most of the state reps have. And I say, if PennDOT gives you any trouble, contact PennDOT. They can help you through, or contact your state rep and they can help you. So it turns out the only thing holding up this guy's license was about $1,000 that PennDOT had levied against his license for a crash he had back in the 1980s. I don't know if he hit like an attenuator or something, but he paid the $1,000 and then he paid the $90 restoration fee and he got his license restored, a current and valid license for the first time in 35 years. And all it took was an extra couple of minutes on my part to accomplish this. And I mean, this happens on a regular. I do this at least once or twice a day for individuals. I did it twice today when I was on the bench, got people the restoration letter. The only thing holding up one guy today was the $90 restoration fee. His license was restorable as of like 2023, and he didn't know what he had to do. All he had to do was pay $90 to PennDOT to get his camera card.
So let me ask you, how so the unique moves that you can make now in your courtroom, how can you what do you plan, or how do you see you making unique moves like that if elected to the Court of Common Pleas?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be easiest from the criminal bench and from the family bench. Judges have discretion there. And, you always have to sort of work within the guide rails of the law, which we always try to do. And you can find creative ways to help people. And sometimes it's just about being patient or finding creative solutions. I tell everyone that comes into court, they'll say, hey, I don't want to waste your time. All I have is time. That's all I have. I've got all the time in the world. I will say my rule is if someone starts repeating themselves, that's when I cut them off. But if we can accomplish something good, I will take the time to do that because it can be life-changing for someone. 5 minutes of my time can change the trajectory of someone's life forever. And it's not a sacrifice for me to give up that time.
Yeah.
And so most of my time on council, as mayor, as DJ, as a lawyer, I know where to look and I know where to go.
Thank you for that, because I was thinking of something similar, like your relationship or the collaboration that you created. I was reading the collaboration that you created with Animal Friends. Can you share a little bit with that? Share a little bit about that with us and how did that get started?
Sure. Yeah. So I am the only judge in the county that uses therapy dogs in the courtroom. And we always use them for my night court option. So I have a night court. I do that the first Thursday of the month. When I introduced it, I was only the second judge in the county to do a night court option for all of my school and juvenile cases. We also reserve time for working folks and families to come in to do landlord-tenant court or traffic court so that they don't have to take off a day of work and lose a day's earnings when they're trying to save their housing. I'd rather them use that money that they could earn to pay off their arrears so that they can have stable housing. So we bring in the therapy dogs, generally always 2. They do 1-hour shifts. And we find, the numbers are there, the stats are there. Dogs help reduce stress. They help reduce anxiety. It brings the temperature down in the waiting room so that when individuals come into the courtroom, they're in a better frame of mind. And they're not worked up, their anxiety has been diminished or mitigated. And when they come in, we can have better conversations and that leads to better outcomes and that benefits all of us. And how it got started is I started working with Animal Friends in 2011 in Sharpsburg. We had a feral cat problem and my colleagues on council had proposed a kill ordinance, which I was not in favor of. So started working with Animal Friends. And they came in, council agreed to give it a try, trap, neuter, return program. And Animal Friends had actually TNR'd 120 feral cats. So average lifespan of a feral cat's about 1.5 to 2 years. So within 2 years, we were actually down to 1 colony of about a dozen cats. And a resident from O'Hara Township was actually taking care of those cats. So, they were fed, they were provided with water, they had bedding materials. And that colony is still down in the riverfront in Sharpsburg. So, and she maintains it every day.
Wow. Okay. I know. Yeah. I thought it was 100. I thought it was 120, but you said it was over 120.
Yeah, it was really around 120, maybe more. But it was at least 120.
Wow. Well, that's good. That's good. So thank you for that. Thank you so much for that. My next question. How do you plan? Nope. What initiatives or changes would you advocate for to improve the justice system in Pennsylvania, particularly in the Court of Common?
Yeah, so I like to tell everyone an anecdotal story, and it's about starting court on time. And as a lawyer, the most troubling thing for me was court, and you show up on time, and the judge doesn't take the bench until 15 minutes later, 30 minutes later. The longest I ever waited for a judge was about 90 minutes. And you're in a courtroom with defendants, with witnesses, with victims. It's not trauma informed because all of these individuals are waiting together, which can cause its own sort of chaos and collateral damage. The lawyers' time is precious. Lawyers can always make more money, but they can never make more time. It's an old adage, and they might have other clients that they have to get to in another court. And then that gets put off, and then another judge gets upset. But nevertheless, so when, I always start court earlier on time. Today we started at 9 a.m. I probably took the bench around 8:45. If individuals get there early, happy to get them out the door as quickly as possible so that they can get back to work or to their families or to their kids. So at City Court, Pittsburgh Municipal Court, where I do not rotate through regularly, city judges rotate through City Court. I'm a suburban judge, but we can fill in there anytime because it's an administrative court, and we do rotate through arraignment court there. But traffic court starts at 8 a.m. and that's what the summons says. So I showed up to traffic court. I was invited down, maybe my third month on the job, and got there about 10 to 8. There's a room full of defendants, but there are no police officers to be found. There were no clerks on the bench. And around 8 o'clock, a clerk popped their head in, looked at me like I had 3 heads. They started looking for the officers. And I said, hey, by 8:15 in my courtroom, everyone gets 15 minutes. And if the officer is there and the defendant is not, and we have good service, we'll have a hearing in their absentia. And, vice versa. If there is a defendant there but no officer, case dismissed because the Commonwealth can't meet their burden. So by 8:15, I started dismissing all of the cases. And the punchline here is, it took me 3 years to get invited back to traffic court. So, culturally, if we just start court on time, it seems small, but it will have a huge impact across the board.
It really would, because I'm gonna tell you, waiting in court when it says to be there at 9 and now it's 11:30, and it's one of the most frustrating, disrespectful things that can happen in a courtroom, And so I really, really appreciate that. I really appreciate that. Because like you said, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
As public servants, we serve the people. And, I always make a habit of it. Typically at City Court, things tend to run a little bit behind if you're working the criminal bench. Because as people filter in, as witnesses filter in, as police filter in, it takes the district attorney's office and the public defender's office or private defense counsel a little bit of time to work out deals. So, it might be 20, 30 minutes until a file hits the bench. But, if court starts at 12:30, I take the bench at 12:30 and I'm sitting there where people can see me and know that I'm prepared, even though I might not get a file until 12:45 or 1 o'clock.
Okay. Oh, wow. So, and that's, it's like I said, it just shows, it sets like you have stated, it sets the tone for the courtroom. Now, do you believe cameras should be in the courtroom?
I would welcome it. I think government should be clean and clear like our water and our air. So any amount of transparency that we could bring to the court would be good. I think when the public eyes are on people, and the courtrooms are public. Anyone can go watch court proceedings unless they're under seal or juveniles are involved. But generally, our courtrooms are empty. There aren't people watching other than the parties who are there. And even a small layer of accountability will get better outcomes in the courtroom. And judges will tend to mind their P's and Q's. Not that we aren't, but it doesn't hurt to have a smoke detector handy.
Yeah.
A good analogy.
Now, let me ask you this. Thank you for your answer. Let me ask you this. As you turn on the TV, as you may talk to a neighbor or a friend or family member, we see ICE going into the courtrooms. Where were your courtroom if elected to the Court of Common Pleas? Where would your courtroom stand with ICE coming into your courtroom?
Yeah, sure. So we know that currently there are no more amnesty sites. Hospitals, sorry, there's a bug. Hospitals are no longer off limits. Churches are no longer off limits. The courts, there's that. Do you see it flying? Courts are no longer. Yeah, courts are no longer off limits. So the duty that we have is, if ICE shows up, I want to see a valid warrant signed by a federal judge that specifically names, the person to be seized. And without that, they can't be showing up and violating someone's due process and taking someone off the streets if they don't have that valid warrant signed by a judge that specifically names that person. Also, the rules of procedure allow cases to be held remotely. So cases can always be held using virtual communication technology if need be.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
My next question. Now, you don't deal with bail, so I'm going to take that out. But
with bail,
criminal justice. What is your approach? No, as Court of Common Pleas. I'm asking you as Court of Common Pleas.
Oh.
You won't be dealing with bail.
Correct. Yeah. Right? So the only time that common pleas judges will be assigning bail is if a motion is made to amend bail, or if you're on the criminal bench and you are the motions judge. So currently, Borkowski, there's a mosquito or something flying around. Borkowski is the motions judge for bail decisions.
Yeah. So let me ask you, because you are So as the judge now, in your district, what is your approach to criminal justice reform, particularly in regard to sentencing, bail, and rehabilitation?
Cool. So I will start with bail. And I will say this, I'm guided by the principles of restorative, fair, and accessible justice. So we'll start with bail, even though that's my middle prong, fair justice. We know we have disparities in our criminal justice system here in Allegheny County. And there was a report that was issued and paid for by Allegheny County Executive Rich Fitzgerald in conjunction with the Rand Corporation and the University of Pittsburgh. And it told us everything we know. So we knew we had disparities in our criminal justice system. And now we have a 240-page document with all of the statistics that back it up. And I believe the study was done through 2019 and 2020, and the results came out a couple of years ago. So with that being said, I do not use cash bail. When I ran for district judge, I ran on a platform of not using cash bail. I can tell you that according to the statistics kept by the Abolitionist Law Center, and they haven't updated their stats since June of 23, but from May of 22 until June of 23, I did 104 arraignments at Pittsburgh Municipal Court, and I only used $1,320 worth of cash bail. And that was the least amount of cash bail used by any district judge by factors of 10. The next lowest bail amount used by any judge was a judge who had only done about 24 arraignments, and he had used about $25,000 in cash. So his average was what I had used total, essentially. And, that's not to say I have a problem with cash bail. I think if cash bail is used appropriately, it would not be an issue. And the rules of criminal procedure, it's Rule 528, 1A and 1B, says 1A says that bail must be tailored to that individual's ability to pay. And Part B says bail must be reasonable. So if you have someone who's indigent or doesn't have any resources, or if you're colloquying them and saying, what do you earn? What do you have left over at the end of every month? What are your expenses like? And they say zero, or they're running in the red, then no amount of cash bail is appropriate because that person cannot afford it. It is not. So if bail was used appropriately in every situation, I would not have a problem with it. But we know that's not the case. We often see bail set 50,000, 100,000, 150,000, 200,000, which I do not believe is appropriate. So at least within the rules of criminal procedure, unless that person is, Sidney Crosby and making $1 million a year. So with that being said, as a former mayor, as a son of a police officer, as a husband with 3 small children, public safety is important to me. So, I'm not letting everyone go willy-nilly. If I determine that no conditions guarantee the safety of the public, I will simply deny that person's bond. And the reasons are many, but primarily I do not want to perpetuate a 2-tiered justice system where those who are unable to afford it get stuck in jail, and those who can afford it can post and get released. And that doesn't necessarily make our communities any safer. And it also doesn't guarantee that that person is going to show up for court. And, people often say, well, how do you know that the people you arraign are showing up if you're not using cash bail? And I now can give you an answer because I had participated in a study with Harvard Law School over the first 3 years I served on the bench. And they recently released the results of their study. And they've got the full array. I've done like 320 arraignments in 3 years at city court. And I release 85% of defendants, and I think it's 91% of those defendants appear for court, and 90% of those defendants do not offend. And I can also tell you that my average for appearance rate and not reoffending is higher than the average of the other judges, despite the fact that I don't use cash bail. So, we can build a system that's effective where we are not using cash bail. And the proof is in the pudding.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you for that. I really, really appreciate that. Because like you said, your father was a police officer. You have a family.
Right.
So public safety extremely important to you.
And I was, as a mayor in a borough, I ran a police department.
Yeah. So I really, really appreciate that. Thank you for that.
Welcome.
Thank you. Couple more questions. First, I want to ask you the report that Rich Fitzgerald did, the 240-page statistic. Where can we find that?
So if you just Google, Rand report, Allegheny County, criminal justice system disparities, it'll pop up.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I love doing these talk times with Terri.
Yeah, and
I learn something every day.
Yeah, so I didn't, answer the rest of your question about restorative justice and about sentencing. So I think you can be creative in courtrooms, especially in the criminal justice sphere. And while I was mayor of Sharpsburg, I actually advocated for an embedded social worker in our police department. And council did not find the money to hire a social worker while I was the mayor, but they did after I took the bench. So the benefit there is when folks come into my court, that social worker is always available. I also work with Passages to Recovery, who sends a social worker to court. So if someone, well, I'll tell you this, I would say that 3/4 of the people who come into court at criminal court day have some form of either unmet mental health needs, or they suffer from some form of substance use disorder, or both. So when we order them to do the mental health eval plus treatment, or drug and alcohol eval plus treatment, or anger management, or anything of that sort, they can meet with the social worker, exchange contact info. The social worker can also get all of the necessary releases signed so that when that person goes off into the wild, the social worker can not only follow up with them, but also with their provider. So there's a layer of accountability there that doesn't exist in every courtroom in the county. So when that person comes back in 60 or 90 days, they've had the social worker sort of, beating their eardrums in about, hey, get it done, get it done, get it done, get it done. And when they come back, they get it done at higher rates, which means that cases stop in my court and they aren't getting sent downtown. They're being either withdrawn, dismissed, or reduced at higher rates. And that helps people maintain their dignity, get back on their feet, stay on their feet. Justice is supposed to be restorative. If someone comes in and, if the DA doesn't have any patience, or the judge doesn't have any patience, or the officer doesn't have any patience, and you can say, hey, well, I'm going to find you guilty of a summary offense, $300, case closed. Do you need a payment plan? They're not learning anything. But if instead you say, let's do treatment, let's do mental health treatment, let's do anger management treatment, let's do batterers intervention treatment, let's do X, Y, or Z, there's still a cost associated with that. These things aren't free, especially if you don't have health insurance. So they are paying a price, but they're getting a valuable restorative lesson out of it. So there's a lot of ways to shield.
Yeah. And also not sending cases. I want to make sure that our listeners heard what I heard. Not sending cases downtown or to the big court is stopping prison pipeline as well. That's where you stop the prisoner pipeline right there. So I greatly appreciate that. Thank you so much. My next question is, why you? Why do you, what do you believe sets you apart from other candidates running for Court of Common Pleas?
Thank you. So I will say, my experience on the bench. I've been doing this for 4 years. In that time, I've handled over 15,000 cases in my courtroom. And that doesn't include the work that I've done at city court, filling in during the daylight hours at criminal court or domestic violence court or non-traffic court or traffic court. And it also doesn't include coverage when I've gone to other courts for my colleagues. We all have each other's backs. And when someone takes a vacation or has a medical emergency, we will fill in for each other, to cover the bench, to cover their cases. So, I have the experience. I have the proven judicial temperament. I have managed a courtroom for 4 years. I've managed parties before me. I'm ruling on the admissibility of evidence. I'm ruling on objections. I'm making decisions in cases. And, granted that, we have low statutory limits on civil cases, 12,000 or less, same thing for landlord tenant, but that might not seem like a lot to some people, but it's life-changing to others. We're making decisions on preliminary hearings, whether cases should be held for court. We're making bail decisions, and these are life-changing decisions for people. And I will tell you, the job, you have to take it with a grain of salt. It's challenging. It's not for everyone. There might be individuals who think they have what it takes to sit on the bench and make these decisions. But I've been doing it for 4 years, and I think I've gotten pretty good at it. You develop a sense, you sort of get, spidey senses for what you can do, what you can't do, for people who might be well-resourced and not need much help at all versus people who, are at risk of falling through the cracks and need resources. And versus individuals who, you just have to send the case downtown. There's a lot of nuance, and, you got to have the patience to peel back the onion and get to the heart of it to find out what's actually going on. Because you have someone's liberty in your hands, and that can't be wasted. It can't be taken away without due process. And these are all, they're skills that on day one, I don't have to go through, a training to learn them. So I'm prepared to go on day one in whatever division I might end up in.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And yes, and so I looked and seen that we don't have any questions in the chat, and so my next to last question is this: if someone wants to talk to you a little more than how you and I were talking, or they may even have questions that I didn't tap into or want to go deeper into what we discussed, how can someone get in touch with you?
Sure. So they can always reach out. The best way to reach me or the campaign is visiting the website, jugerudzki.com. You can also check out social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Blue Sky, and the handles on all of those pages is Juge Rudzki. You can DM us. You can send us emails. The email's on the website as well. You can reach out via that too. I'm always accessible. I take pride in being accessible. It's part of being a mayor. You answer the phone at all hours of the night. I was never good at setting boundaries, much to my wife's dismay. So I'm happy to talk to anybody. I can't walk down any street in Sharpsburg without getting stopped on every corner. And I love it. I enjoy it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for that. Thank you so much. But before we call it tonight, is there anything else that you would like to say before we wrap it up?
Yeah, no, it's, this is about the people. I've always been person oriented, community oriented, about doing the right thing. I'm endorsed by the Allegheny County Democratic Committee. I'm endorsed by the Justice Slate. I'm endorsed by the Young Dems, by the Stonewall Dems, Congressman DeLuzio, Allegheny County Executive Innamorato. So we've built some good momentum. We've built a broad base. And I just hope that I can continue delivering what I'm doing now for all of Allegheny County. Vote by mail should be dropping sometime next week in your mailboxes. May 20th is in-person election day voting. So, generally these odd year elections, especially a municipal election, which is after that presidential cycle, and those odd years tend to be low voter turnout. So, if you want your voice to be heard, and we elect judges here in Pennsylvania for better or for worse. I think it's the best way to choose our judges because it gives, it's a full democratic process, and you want the bench to reflect your ideals. So get out and vote, or if you get that mail-in ballot, don't forget to turn it in, and just look forward to seeing everybody on May 20th.
Yes, thank you so much for that, because yes, we do have a unique opportunity right now. There is 8 seats open. And so we have, this does not come around a lot. So it is, just like you said, it is extremely important to use our vote as our voice. There we have it, candidate Matt Rudzki.
I think in Polish, in proper Polish, in its original ethnic language, it would be Rudzki.
Okay. So we have candidate Matt Rudzki for Court of Common Pleas, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, Matt, for joining us this evening.
Terri, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to say good night.